What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and I am pumped because today is NFL kickoff opening Sunday, and we finally got football back on the weekends. I could not be more thrilled for what's coming today. Before we get into the games here, I'm going to record a quick buy low and sell high trade candidate video for fantasy football. This video is not going to come out on opening Sunday. Obviously, I've got to cut things up, and obviously you guys have got your fantasy teams to watch, so this video is probably going to be coming out around Monday or Tuesday, but we'll get right into it here. So first up, I'm going to start with the buy low candidates, players I think that you can get a tremendous amount of upside and value for not a very high price at this current moment in the fantasy football season when they haven't quite hit their ceiling yet. So my first buy low player is actually Jonathan Taylor, and he's a very common one around the fantasy football community. Jonathan Taylor is running behind the best offensive line, arguably, in fantasy football. If you don't think he has the best line, he certainly has the best guard in Quentin Nelson for run plays. He's an extremely talented player, and he's shown that he can clearly handle a workhorse load in his time at Wisconsin, where he handled all those carries and never really sat and missed time with injuries. He's 100% built to carry that goal line workload as well. So Taylor has a really great upside. And then on top of that, he's splitting the backfield right now with Marlon Mack, which is a bit of a concern at the moment for his starting value. However, he's going to be a bona fide RB1 the second he takes over that role, which he will at some point this season. It's just a matter of time before he takes that workload over from Marlon Mack and gets that starting job. So Jonathan Taylor's a guy who right now in non-dynasty league formats, you can definitely snatch up from a team in your league for very cheap. Next up, you're going to start seeing kind of a bit of a trend here. It's the rookie running backs, or the buy low guys right now in the early parts of the season. And, of course, right now, the next guy on my list is J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is in one of the most explosive offenses in fantasy football and the NFL. Between Lamar Jackson and all those deep threats on the offense and Mark Andrews, they can't really key in on the running back because they're almost like the least explosive player, or in a sense the least dangerous player on that team, because you expect Lamar Jackson to be the primary weapon coming out of the backfield there. I truly believe that if J.K. Dobbins takes over the starting role from Mark Ingram some point in this season, he will be a league winner. I think J.K. Dobbins has a slightly higher risk attached to him because I think the chances that he takes over completely from Mark Ingram are lower than the chances of, say, Jonathan Taylor or some of the other guys we'll get into. However, I think J.K. Dobbins' situation is fantastic, and he's already been rumored to have a major role in that offense. So I think that J.K. Dobbins could be a really, really viable starter down the stretch in fantasy leagues this season and be an extremely valuable player in your lineups. Next up, you could probably guess it based off of how this has started off, but we're going to go Cam Akers here for my third buy low candidate. Cam Akers is currently listed as the third running back on the depth chart going into week 1. However, Darrell Henderson is a little bit dinged up. We don't know how much time he's going to see on the field. Obviously, the game will have happened by the time I posted this video. But I think that he has a chance to, if he goes crazy on Sunday Night Football, that job is his and no one else is touching it the rest of the year and probably going forward. I think that Cam Akers honestly might have the easiest path to a RB1 workhorse load in fantasy football this season. And if he gets that role, he's immediately a great standard play off the bat because I can see him getting 20-plus touches a game total and getting those red zone touches as well. If he really takes command of that backfield and gets his grasp around that starting role, I think down the stretch he's going to be an invaluable starter and a RB2 or flex play in your lineup that could potentially give you the edge over someone else and win your league. Fourth buy low candidate here, I'm actually going to go with Deebo Samuel. The 49ers actually just put him on their injured reserve, so that is going to put people's trade value on him through the floor, and no one's going to be valuing him very much. I will say this. If you have IR designated slots on your roster, please trade something for Deebo Samuel. It might seem like right now you're giving up more than you should be, but when Deebo Samuel is back on the field, he could easily be a flex or a wide receiver 2 for your team, and I mean that in the best way. Chances are you already have a wide receiver 1 on your roster that is hypothetically a better fantasy player than Deebo Samuel is. However, Deebo Samuel is an extremely good football player, and that shows up in his fantasy football numbers. After the catch, Deebo Samuel is a monster, and he honestly reminds me of a running back. Deebo Samuel's numbers on rushing attempts and handoffs on jet sweeps and end arounds are ridiculous, and he breaks a lot of tackles and goes for a lot of yards on those plays. His added rushing value in fantasy football is crucial and really sets him above the bar in terms of what you're getting on a weekly basis from him. There's not many wide receivers that can say that they're honestly a week-to-week threat to get carries out of the backfield, and I think that Deebo Samuel is probably the best option other than maybe Robert Woods. Additionally, I think that Deebo Samuel is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 on that team when he gets back into the starting lineup and is healthy. I see him returning within a few weeks, and he will make some big noise for your fantasy lineup. Additionally, I'm going to make a quick side note and give you a little preview into one of my other videos. George Kittle's fantasy value these first few weeks until Deebo Samuel comes back is going to be through the roof. George Kittle's going to be soaking up his extra attempts and targets because they don't really have anyone else on the roster besides Brandon Ayuk who can really handle that load based off of training camp reports. So I would honestly advise selling George Kittle after you soak up those first 2 to 3 weeks of top-tier tight end 1 production. George Kittle is going to peak for as long as Deebo Samuel is not on the field. And the moment he comes back, George Kittle is still a clear top 3 tight end in fantasy football this season, but the numbers are going to come down just a little bit. And if you can snatch, say, a RB1 or a more valuable player from another team that is harder to come by, so let's say your team is weak at running back, and you can flip George Kittle for a solid RB1 from another fantasy team and get a sleeper tight end off of the waiver wire or in that trade out additionally, you just landed yourself a huge deal. I love having top-tier tight ends, but I think that if you can flip George Kittle for an RB1, I'll take that every single time. Now let's get into my sell high list. I think these are guys who are just going to be really frustrating players this fantasy season, and I don't want anything to do with them. And if you drafted them, you can still save yourself. Get rid of these players. Get back whatever you can in return for them. Don't sell yourself too short, but also don't be attached to these guys because chances are they're going to do more harm than good for your lineup, and you're going to end up regretting your decision late in the season when you lost some money or had a disappointing fantasy season. My first player on this list, and I'm a big fan of this player. I wish he was in a better situation, but that's Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ is in an extremely run-heavy offense that's led by Kevin Stefanski, so I have major concerns right off the bat there. I think the volume is not going to quite be there for OBJ due to the mouths he has to deal with being fed by the offense to begin with. They've got Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Jarvis Landry, and then Odell. So obviously Odell's probably the best pass-catching weapon on that team, but regardless, he's not going to be getting those 12 to 15 target games that he might have been getting in New York when he was the clear-cut, really only hope on that offense. To add on to that, his division is brutal. He's got to play that Pittsburgh Steelers defense twice a year and that Baltimore secondary twice a year. The Bengals are a little bit more of a joke in the secondary, but those are still 4 really hard games on top of the rest of their schedule that Odell has to deal with. And they might get down early in those games, but their coverage is certainly not going to slouch on him, and they're going to be locking him up. OBJ is going to have a few really great weeks this season where the Browns get that running game going, and they hit a huge play-action ball over the top, and Odell makes a lightning-quick score and flashes what we love and used to have seen out of him. But that's not going to be a weekly occurrence for Odell this season. Odell's going to have a lot of frustrating weeks where the Browns are just hammering the football and running over and over and over again, and they're just not clicking in that passing game. He'll have some ugly games where he has 4 or 5 catches for 60 yards and no score, and those are just fantasy killers. You need scores and you need high-volume receptions if you're in any sort of a PPR format. So Odell is just not where I want to be in fantasy football this season, and it really sucks to say that. And on top of that, Baker Mayfield, obviously he showed some flashes in his rookie season, but his second year, he had a big sophomore slump, and it's really hard to feel comfortable and invest into a quarterback that played like that last season. My next up on the sell high list is Marlon Mack, and this kind of goes into my Jonathan Taylor argument for the buy low candidate. Marlon Mack is going to lose that starting role at some point, so it makes sense that while he has that starting job right now, to get rid of him, and you might suffer for a couple weeks while you're missing that starting running back, but you don't want to get stuck in that situation when it really matters come playoff season and you don't have that guy in your lineup and you have a first round exit because you just sat with your lineup and you didn't make any changes, and then Marlon Mack just lays a dud for you and you lose your playoff game. So My kind of philosophy for fantasy football is kind of coast, just stay right where you need to be for the majority of the season, and get hot when it counts. And that's what I did last season. I was a 500 team last year. However, I made trades at the trade deadline projecting guys to explode right around playoff time and be really great starters. I ended up getting second place and making a return on my investment because I traded for guys like Miles Sanders, and I went in for Todd Gurley, and people were down on Todd Gurley because he wasn't quite what he once was. But I ended up getting huge touchdown production out of him. And so I was getting guys who I projected to get hot down the stretch rather than win my regular season games. I knew that if I could just get a spot in the playoffs, I had a chance to win it all if I had the right lineup at that time. So that's really where my head is at for fantasy football this year and in general. And especially do this if you're in a 12-team league with a 7 or 8-man playoff. It's a little bit harder to do that in 14 playoff leagues, but when you have a large playoff pool, it's not very hard to get in. You just have to not have a really garbage roster and not make terrible lineup choices. So I really think that you should be playing for the postseason. Make sure that you can have the best team assembled when playoff time comes and not really stress so much over those week-to-week games. My third sell-high candidate is T.Y. Hilton, and he is a guy that I have reaped the rewards of and also suffered greatly from. T.Y. Hilton, I think, is going to have a great week one. Obviously, you'll be able to reflect on this once the video comes out because, like I've been saying, this video is coming out after week one but being recorded prior to it. It's currently Sunday morning. So T.Y. Hilton, I think, is going to go all over the Jags defense. Their secondary is terrible. T.Y. Hilton has a great track record against division opponents. And I think that T.Y. Hilton is a actually really, really good football player. However, the one thing that I have an issue with T.Y. Hilton is reliability. T.Y. Hilton, when he's on the field, is a great fantasy player. But those hamstrings are a killer. T.Y. Hilton on a weekly basis is questionable almost every week. And as a fantasy owner, it's one of the most disheartening and frustrating things you'll ever see because T.Y. Hilton is an absolute gamer, and that man grinds, and he suits up for the games. But when he's got a bad enough hamstring injury, they put him out there as a decoy, and you start him in your fantasy lineups, and he gets 4 catches because they were just using him to bait the defense away from their actual game plan and game script, and it just kills your fantasy team for that week. T.Y. Hilton, like I said, when he's healthy, is exceptional, and he's phenomenal. But he misses a lot of games, and he's also used as a decoy a lot when he's not healthy. Flip T.Y. Hilton for any value you can get. If you could even flip him for a DJ Chark, a Tyler Boyd, those are great players that I would love to trade him for, who I think are going to be a lot more reliable over the course of the entire season opposed to T.Y. Hilton for the first few weeks while he's healthy. Wrapping things up here, just about second to last player on my sell high list, and that's Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. Just like Odell, I think Stefon Diggs is in a run-first offense. There's no doubt about it. Buffalo is a run-first team. And at times, like Baker Mayfield and Odell will do, Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs will make magic happen on the football field. They're going to have huge plays where Josh Allen just unleashes his cannon and hits Diggs for a 78-yard touchdown over the top because Stefon Diggs is an absolute burner. And he'll just run past everybody and score a humongous touchdown. But there's also going to be those games when Stefon Diggs, the cold weather is going to catch up to him. I think Stefon Diggs is a little bit soft. I hate to say it, but I'm a Packer fan. I've been watching him in the division for years. He's a diva wide receiver. He likes to complain. I can see him. He's been playing in a dome since the Vikings moved into U.S. Bank Stadium. I can see Stefon Diggs in that outdoor Buffalo Bills stadium just getting frustrated. I could see his hamstrings kind of tightening up and missing some time. I can also see Diggs just having some brutal games against Xavier Howard and Byron Jones in that Dolphins secondary that's very good, along with Stephon Gilmore in the Patriots defense, which those are 4 games a year. So his division schedule is a little bit tough too. I just think Stefon Diggs is going to struggle a little bit this season. He'll have those really nice games when he makes a humongous number for you, but he's also going to have low catch games with no scores that are going to be ugly just like Odell. My last sell high candidate is one that is really unfortunate for me. Miles Sanders is my final sell high candidate for week 1. Sanders is a guy who I invested heaps of first and second round picks into this season, He was primed for that breakout year, and he still has a chance to do so, but he's dealing with an injury right now that has the potential to derail his entire year. And so if you have the opportunity to make a quality trade to get a different running back or another valuable player in your fantasy lineup for him, I would do so. Don't trade Miles Sanders for a quarterback. Don't panic and trade him for less than he's worth. But there's a chance that with him missing week 1, that this injury is a little bit more severe than we thought. He practiced on Friday, but is not even traveling with the team to Washington to play the Washington football team. I think that Sanders has the chance to come back healthy, and it's a little bit of a positive sign that they're not playing in week 1, because as a fantasy owner, what you really want is for him to be 100% when he comes back to the field, because hamstrings can ruin a season. If his hamstrings are beat up, he's not going to be able to run fast. He's going to lose his burst and his explosion. He's not going to be able to make guys miss anymore. And if he progresses that hamstring injury, he's going to miss significant time. So I'm encouraged but discouraged at the same time by him missing week 1. Him missing week 1 makes me believe that he might miss more time and that this injury is a little bit more severe than we thought. But I'm also encouraged because I'm glad they're not suiting him up and pushing him if he's not ready to go. So by no means am I off Miles Sanders. I have to stay true to how I drafted. Miles Sanders was my guy that was going to have that breakout year, that top 5 RB performance, and was really going to pop in fantasy football this season. I haven't given up on Miles Sanders. But for those of you guys who have and can get a quality trade out of him for another lower tier RB1 or a wide receiver 1, maybe even that George Kittle type, I would do so. Injuries are a huge part of fantasy football, and if you can move off of one player who's injured and has risks associated with him and move on to another player who might not necessarily have as high of a ceiling, but that risk and that floor is there, or I should say the risk isn't there and the floor is, then you take that every single time. So with that being said, a little bit of a sad way to wrap up my sell high and buy low candidates video for week 1. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informational and useful. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because I'll be putting out videos, fantasy football related like this, 3 to 4 times a week, and then I'll be posting my own content as well. So I've got all the football content you could ever need on this channel. So subscribe, turn that bell on, go check out my socials. There's a lot of good stuff on there. I'll have a lot of game day updates and analysis on players who aren't playing on a given Sunday, and what you should do about that in your fantasy lineups if that player is on your team. So make sure to hit me up on those, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.